All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We'll go ahead and get started. You're here for today's demonstration, how to configure an Esri ArcGIS and IBM Maximo integration with the GeoNexus integration platform. My name is Katie Majewski, and I'm a marketing coordinator here at GeoNexus, and I'm happy to be joined by Umesh Menon, our VP of Strategic Product Management, to help me answer some of the questions you might be having after the end of the demonstration today. Today, I will be showing a recorded demonstration of Andrew, one of our software implementation leads, walking you through the beginning stages of configuring a no-code bidirectional integration between IBM Maximo and Esri ArcGIS within the GeoNexus integration platform. Before we dive into the demonstration today, I'm going to take a few minutes to set a quick foundation of who we are for those of you who might not be familiar with GeoNexus. GeoNexus is a software company, and we redefine the previous custom code approach to integration by providing a fully supported, easy-to-use, proven platform for system integration to simplify the configuration and management of your various enterprise integrations. So there's really three main components to the platform. The first is simplified configuration. So within the platform, we provide an easy to navigate user interface that connects your enterprise systems with little to no code, allowing you to quickly set up your configuration. This streamlines maintenance and management throughout the entire lifetime of the integration, as well as allowing additions or modifications to be made on the fly, again, with little to no code required. The second is automated synchronization. So once your configuration is complete, we can help you automate and schedule your synchronization on a specified task. If you have a system of record established already or would like to set one, we can also synchronize your data bidirectionally as well if you'd like. The last is active reporting. So once you've configured your integration and you have your synchronization running on a schedule, we provide in-depth reports to show that everything has run as intended. Some of the benefits GIP reporting can provide are detailed descriptions of any errors, orphans, discrepancies, and more that may have occurred. How we simplify integration even further is through our library of connectors you can see on the screen below. Each one of these connectors understands the unique business logic of each system and are constantly upgraded to allow you to take advantage of the latest and greatest system features with no fears of software version lock or downtime. So now that you've heard a bit about GeoNexus, we'll dive right into the demonstration.
Hi, everybody. This is Andrew Edmonds here with GeoNexus, and I'm going to be going through a quick demo on some of the beginning steps for configuring a GIP integration between GIS and Maximo. So once it's been launched, you can see we have here the graphic user interface for the GeoNexus integration platform. So right off the bat, we have our project folder right here. And one of the cool features with GIP is being able to actually manage multiple projects. So if you had multiple, I guess, organizations or groups of data within the user group that might be using this product for a single machine or a single instance, you can have various projects put together with your different connections right here. So once we crack open our project, we can see the console and our reports options. These are the top two tabs here, and the console is pretty much how we would do our press play option. So once everything is configured and we want to run a synchronization between the edge systems, the console is where you can manually hit Start Synchronizer. Alternatively, you can configure the Windows Task Scheduler to run this on a schedule. So if you wanted to synchronize it every night, you could do it, once every 24 hours, you could do it once a week, however best fits your organization's need for synchronizing the data. The reports folder right here, we've got a link to the file location for it. And if I had any reports in here, this is where I would be able to double click one and pull them up. They come up as PDFs. You can launch it with Chrome, or view it with Chrome rather. And that gives you a description of all of the data that gets synchronized and then back through the webinar connection here. We can set our recipients up so that people can get lists of reports, or there are lists of people who can get reports, and you can configure how you want those reports to be delivered and who gets what report. So if there's an error, then you might have a group that is notified when something needs to be resolved, a conflict between one of the two systems perhaps, or you could just have successes where every success report just goes straight to another maybe automated inbox. But this is where all that configuration would take place, and that's all there to customize how our users can receive the information that is being generated by the product. So we've got our project and we are connecting to our edge system. So this is utilizing the Maximo REST connector, which is what I described earlier as having multiple authentication types and letting us connect to Maximo. Here we have our authentication type down here. You can plug in your user, your password, you can specify port, your connection type being HTTP versus HTTPS. Got all kinds of API context down in here, some certificate management options down here with the checkboxes. And then for our geodatabase connection, well, our Esri connection rather, this is configured using a GIS database connection, but we could also add a new connection using enterprise or online services, a SQL workspace. Here we also have more connectors showing up. So once you've configured your connections, you can validate them to make sure that you're able to communicate with your edge systems. Love that validate button. Makes things much easier when we're troubleshooting connections. The value lists are something that I'll come back to a little bit later, but they allow us to perform translations. So they typically get used more once you've actually got a data set that you're configuring. Then you can use a value list to apply a translation, and that value list might apply to multiple data sets, which is why we've got it up here above them, so that multiple groupings of data can use the same translation rules if that's needed. So stepping down here to our data sets, which, as I described earlier, that's kind of the high level description of the information that we are going to be synchronizing and grouping data by. So here we have a transformer bank data set, and it's got a GIS definition for a transformer bank and a Maximo definition for a transformer bank, and those are configured in the data sources. So we can click down here. I'm going to actually close all my tabs and open that back up. So here we have our data source. So we can see that I've specified the geodatabase connection. We've got our name for that in there. Other information about the data source on the GIS side, as far as narrowing it down all the way down to the table. And then we can see our unique identifier for this transformer table is the facility ID. Here we've got our transformer source selected. We've got the unique attribute type, which is a field. So potentially we could also calculate fields. So if we wanted to concatenate a field where a GIS record may be uniquely defined by the combination of facility ID and serial number or something like that, we can calculate that and then specify it as a unique identifier for the GIS records. And the same goes for Maximo. So if we look over at the Maximo equation here, we're using our Maximo transformer bank name. We're using the REST connection, which we've defined up here. We've got the location, so that's the type of object that we're configuring within Maximo. We could also configure against many other groupings or objects within Maximo, but locations, assets, service address, meters, these are the more common ones. You specify your org, your site, classification, get down to your primary system ID, and then within the data source configuration right here, that you can specify your foreign keys for Maximo. So in this case, you've got your Maximo transformer attribute, which is a location, which we are aligning against the GIS facility ID. And I've got these reversed. This is the same as this, only backwards. And I don't necessarily need to do that, but what's cool is I can actually use a different pair of keys based on the direction that I'm going. So maybe facility ID can link to location when we're pushing information from GIS to Maximo. But then for the purpose of pushing from Maximo back to GIS, you could actually shift that and use a different set of keys if you're expecting your keys to change, which is pretty flexible, although definitely pretty complicated as well. It's worth thinking out and planning for. So after configuring our data sources, we can set up our synchronization rules. So when we set up a sync rule, you would add a target. Oh, I've already got the target rules built in. So I've got update rules and I've got create rules. If I wanted to add mapping rules that are create, delete, orphan, link, replace, we would be able to set up those rules right in here. So here we have Maximo Transformer Bank target rules. So this is when the Maximo source here is the target of a change that originates in GIS. In this case, we would be creating records into Maximo as the target based off of something that's happening in GIS. When we see a new record in GIS that has a unique identifier that doesn't have a matching unique identifier in Maximo, we see, oh, there's something in GIS, there needs to be something in Maximo. What are we doing on creates? Well, the created Maximo record will have all of its data source defaults. So things like the organization ID, the site, classification, all that goes over on default, but any other specific rules for creates, such as taking the comments from a transformer bank and then sending that over to the comment specification in Maximo, this is where you would make those mappings to align your data sources across systems. So you would specify various attributes about the GIS transformer bank. We'll go in here, say GIS transformer bank. We'll look at a field. We've got whatever our source field might be, say feeder. And then this would be going, again, as a Maximo target. So we're at a Maximo transformer bank location. We can look at maybe its attributes. We could say we're aligning the feeder ID to go over to the, hopefully there's a feeder ID on this. On here, there's not, maybe it would be in a spec, but this would be where you'd specify your type of field that you want to align from GIS over to Maximo. There we go, got a spec for it. Great. And here you can toggle whether it's enabled or disabled, and the report only would determine whether or not the sync actually fires, or if you just want it to show up in a report as this is what might happen. And then going the opposite direction, we have update rules from Maximo back to GIS as the target. And here we can access the Maximo attributes and specs and calculated values and related values and send those back to GIS depending on how our field is aligned. Now, earlier I mentioned the value lists and how I'd return to those. This is where they come in. So, for example, here we have status, which is mapping to the GIS construction status field. And Maximo, if most of our Maximo users here ought to be familiar with Maximo statuses, you typically have things like operating and in service and ready or not ready or decommissioned, whatever the status may be. There's a coded value domain for those statuses where you have a certain list of available statuses that you might have to draw from. And then sometimes you're trying to line that up with a GIS field that may not have those exact values. So like this, we've got a construction status field and it's running through a status translation. So here is what that status value list translation might look like. So in this hypothetical scenario here, the construction status in GIS would be Boolean on 0 is not working or 1 is working. Well, here we can say, all right, if it's operating or ready or in service in Maximo, we're going to send that to GIS as a 1. Or if it's in repair or out of service, we can send it to GIS as a 0. Same goes for manufacturers if you wanted to go the other way from GIS to Maximo. And really, it doesn't, the the method or the direction for which system is applying these is not going to be super important. The important is aligning your from and your to values so that whichever system is sending this value of ABB, we're going to send ABB/Westinghouse to its target destination. And so it's pretty easy to flip these value lists, and these value lists gives us the ability to accommodate for GIS and Maximo both storing coded value domains where sometimes the value that a user sees is different from what actually gets stored in the database. And we can accommodate that so that all of the translations are properly applied. But that is all I wanted to show for the demo of doing some quick alignments, showing how you might specify your data set. Right here, we've got our data set, define our data sources, and then choose some update and create rules for synchronizing records across systems. Thank you very much.
While I give you guys the time to type in your questions, I want to thank you all for coming again. I did want to mention that there will be a survey after the demo today where you can continue to submit additional questions or provide feedback on the demonstration today. You can also request specific topics or connectors to be seen in future demonstrations as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Umesh for questions.
All right, thanks, Katie. Yeah, a few questions have come in. The first one is GIP installed on-prem? So yes, so GIP is a desktop application. It's typically installed on a Windows application server. How does this compare to Maximo Spatial? So just a few things that we do a little bit differently than the Maximo Spatial. One is that we have functionality called preview mode, which allows you to see what a commit mode run would potentially look like without actually committing those changes into your edge systems. We call that preview mode. So it's a great way and a handy way to test your configuration, or if you're doing a data load as well, and you want to get a preview of maybe what that's going to do, that's where that really comes in handy. Another one that Andrew went through was around the translation functionality that we call value lists. This is really handy to handle the coded value domain translations. So that's another one. And then the out-of-the-box reporting. So nothing you have to do to build that in. That comes with the application every time the GIP runs and executes, whether it's on the schedule or it's a manual run. That'll provide a report, which can be emailed out to a set of users as well. Okay. What versions of Maximo or Esri do you have to use in GNexus? So we support, from an Esri standpoint, 10.x to the latest 11 versions of Enterprise. And that's one of the benefits you get from using our product. We're constantly testing against the latest and greatest things that are out there with all the productized connectors that we have and the systems we connect to. And then from a Maximo perspective, we do connect with all the 7 and MAS 8 versions of Maximo. There's another question. Can you explain the migration steps from GeoWorks Sync to GIP? So what we've done in GIP when you're converting from GeoWorks Sync is we actually have a converter, built-in converter. So you really just import the configuration from GeoWorks Sync into GIP, and we'll convert all those items into the GIP configuration. So it kind of retros into that. And that's it. We try to make that as easy as possible to do. So it's really just importing that in. Yeah, there's another question around will copying the config XML file from sync to GIP work? Yeah, it's really importing that in. So we have an import functionality that'll automatically convert that to GIP. There's a question around when the nightly sync operation is performed, does GIP compare the entirety of both data sets, or does it simply compare the deltas since the last time the sync was performed? That's a good question. So when it's doing the nightly sync, so we have two modes you can run GIP in. One is called a full compare mode, which is going to extract the data from the data sets that's configured. So whatever filters are put into that data set, we will pull everything into a full compare of the data that's there, that's extracted. And the other mode you can run in is near real time, and near real time is where we'll be comparing the delta changes. Does GIP support API key for Maximo? Yes, it does support API key. So leveraging that, many of our customers now are using API key when connecting into Maximo through both GeoWorks and GIP. Does this process involve the MIF in Maximo? So we use the Maximo Maximo REST API to connect to. So it doesn't involve the MIF. In terms of, there's another question around the full compare versus near real-time mode. We kind of look at, one of the use cases for near real-time mode is really for critical data that you want to sync over. So if in cases of maybe like work order statuses that you need updated more frequently so that you can trigger another process to run would be an opportunity to use near real time as opposed to the full compare mode. We do recommend that customers that are run near real time mode also run the full compare mode on a weekly basis or some frequency, at least, just to ensure that you have data integrity, right? Because sometimes things can be missed. So the full compare mode really ensures that you're getting a full compare of your data between your two sources, between your systems. Okay, and another one, do I configure the integration or does GeoNexus help? Absolutely, there's a lot of flexibility in configuration, and our goal is to enable our customers to be able to go and configure the application. We have a delivery services team that can help support users in a variety of ways. So I would recommend that we connect to really understand your scenario, and then we can figure out what's the best way to support you from a configuration standpoint. Okay, that covers all the questions that I can see.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And again, if you have any additional questions, you can continue to submit them in the survey after this. So before we close things up, so I just wanted to lightly mention some of the upcoming events that we have scheduled. So we are actually going to be heading to the Spring Mug Conference in Chattanooga next week, which is coming up super quickly here. I can't believe it. But we'll be demoing the platform during vendor hours on Tuesday evening in booth number 5. If you are going to be attending, please be sure to stop by, and we'll be sure to connect with you. Umesh is actually going to be attending that conference, so if you're there, let us know, and we'd love to connect with you. Additionally, we are hosting a webinar next month on May 8th. That's going to be highlighting an Oracle WAX to GIS integration project for Fayetteville Public Works Commission. And then lastly, our next demonstration is scheduled for May 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern, and that will highlight our capabilities around the utility network. So with that, here's our information. If you have any additional questions, would like to recommend a topic, or schedule a time to meet with us directly at one of the upcoming conferences or events, please feel free to reach out to us. This is our contact information here. Again, there will be a survey after the demo if you prefer to write your questions or topic recommendations there. But I hope everyone has a great day, and thank you so much for joining.